myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's the Retro Show. I haven't had one of these for a few weeks due to Newcastle's fixture list. So it's a welcome to Steve, Mitch, Steve, George and Stu as we look back at Newcastle United versus Queen's Park Rangers over the years. And we've got Steve Wilkinson sitting next to me. So what we'll do is we will go with the memories of the games that you remember between Newcastle and QPR, lads, and then we'll do just reminding those who maybe is tuning in for the first time as well. We're going to go through our celebrity fans from Queen's Park Rangers and those players who've played for both clubs, and then the lads will pick their teams, combined players who played for both clubs as well. So I'll also try to catch the lads out with a few of these pictures. I've got some absolute belters today, so we'll see how good the lads' eyesight is today. But Steve, give us your first game between Newcastle and QPR.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to start on a quite a depressing one, unfortunately, but it's quite a memorable game. Not so much for the fact that we played Queen's Park Rangers, but it highlights the situation then as opposed to what we've had in recent times. And it's the game in 1978, in April 1978. It was the second last home game of the season, and it was the end of the Golden era the year before when Richard Dennis came in. There was a lot of unrest, if anybody remembers those times. And Richard Dennis got sacked. Were in the bottom two just about all season. And eventually Bill McGarry took over, the sort of Joe Kinnear of the day. I think I would probably mark him as somebody who was established but wasn't going to put any great shoots up. And it was also the time when, equivalent to what had gone on in recent times with the Magpie Group, and then the more the sort of things that some of you guys have been involved with in recent years, of the Newcastle Supporters Association, which was formed in the back end of 77, 78, originally with Malcolm Dix, with the objective of getting him on the board. He was entitled to be on the board as a shareholder, and that was the route to get in and have a look at what was going on, because there was a lot of suspicious activity going on behind the closed shop that was there then. And I was one of the ones that involved in the start of the NSA at that time, and it was just depressing. Then we got to the end of the season, and we decided, because this was the last Saturday home match of the season, that would, when we're playing QPR, that would do some sort of protest. And we decided to do a banner. And I don't know, did you manage to put that up, Steve? On the
bear with us, mate. It's just taking a little bit of time to load, but carry on talking. We'll get there.
Yeah, I had a cutting of this from it appeared in the People on the Sunday, or the News of the World, or one of them was on the back page, this thing, but it caused a bit of a kerfuffle. And that's the wording we put on the badge, and I was involved a little bit in deciding the words, because it seemed like that it was almost as if the board didn't care about getting relegated. Now, why I say it compares with different times now is that we know financially now that getting relegated is a disaster, and we certainly hope for all sorts of reasons, takeover, etc., that we're still in the Premier League, because that's where the money is. But in those days, I think the most of the income came from gate money, and if you were struggling, and as we were with the team, and the board didn't want to invest in the club, you were actually better off as a top second division club, which Newcastle had been numerous times in the 60s when I first started going, and then they certainly weren't going to invest in players at this time. So it almost seemed like that they just weren't bothered about staying up, and the crowd that day was, I think it was about 13,000 in. I think they got down to 8,000 on the last game of the season, and that was typical of the crowds, the sort of, teens of thousands. And if they could, in the next year, when they went down to the second division, where initially was started nearer the top, there wasn't 10,000 at the gate, and they were probably playing the players better, less money. So the club were financially better off at that time. So we felt it was almost an apt thing that the board had wanted to go down to try and bring more revenue in that way, and they certainly didn't care. And it started the trigger of Malcolm Dix and Alan Rooney and John Woff and Peter Ratcliffe and the guys eventually forming the Magpie Group. I wasn't involved in those days, but it went on the rest history as far as getting John Hawley and etc. later on. But it all started around about that time on the night that Richard Dennis got sacked. I think actually after the Bastia game. But that game we just played like we had been. We lost 3-0. There was a lot of unrest. When that banner went up, just after the kickoff, there was a bit of kerfuffle when the stewards intervened. It was about a 6 foot by 3 foot banner. Some of the lads decided to put it up in the east stand paddock in front of the stand. In those days, you might remember they were standing in front of the east stand. And unlike the banners that have gone up in recent years, where anti-Ashley banners have been quite a lot over the years in recent times, that nobody seemed bothered about that. But that caused a bit of a kerfuffle, and there was no arrests made, but it was certainly confiscated very quickly, and they weren't happy that it was appearing on Match of the Day, and as I say, it appeared in this cutting and I think it was the Sunday People, and on the Sunday. So that's a memory of a QPR game, not a very good memory of a QPR game, but it was the one that first sprung to mind when remembering that was the team we played that day way back. So that's my first story.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Just shows that we're always at loggerheads with the board in some way, shape or form. Some things never change. Mitch, over to you, mate.
I've got to say, QPR is a team I always enjoy seeing we play. They always seem to have players I would like to see play as well, in their squads or in their sides. There's one game in particular springs to mind, but I think we'd better leave that one to you, Steve, later on, probably.
Hold on, we'll get the elephant out of the room. There we go. That's it. That's the moment that you're referring to. There's Cliffy Ahmed, yes. God bless him, in the bottom left. But where you see that stand at the far end there, that is the home stand. And if you look very closely in the top tier, you will see 4 orange-coated stewards surrounding somebody. Yep, that's me. Basically, Peter Ramage offered me the opportunity to have some VIP tickets for the game. He was very kind to put us in the home end with all the Queen's Park Rangers Rajis. This is an absolute nightmare for me because I'll take my mate who's a Liverpool fan, one of my best mates. We're down there. We got there late. We got in, went into this VIP room or whatever it was called, where there was a couple of the players were in. Nicky Butt was in. I remember seeing him, and Shola was in there, and we had a big crack, and we went out and sat in the stand. Anyway, cut long story short. During the game, of course, you'll remember Lovenkrands scored the goal, and Newcastle fans went wild. I'm too sensible by this time to jump up and down. I didn't want to give the game away. However, the other Newcastle fans who were in that area couldn't resist jumping up and down, including an old guy in his 70s in front of us, and he was with his young granddaughter and grandson. And because Newcastle had took the lead, this how can we say it, intoxicated Cockney QPR hooligan decides to have a pop at the guy in front of us, and I resisted it. I still didn't want to get involved, but he wouldn't let it lie. He carried on and carried on and carried on, saying he shouldn't be in, and he was getting quite aggressive. So I told him to pipe down. Well, that was it. Worst possible thing you could do. He then turns his attention to me, starts having a pop at me and me mate. Now, to be honest, there was other Newcastle fans around who then started getting involved. Well, the next thing you know, it was like Green Street. He just suddenly gives a signal, and there was about 50 people just suddenly started running from different areas and started coming down towards us. People scattered everywhere. My mate ran up over. He got away. Where he went, I don't know. I was literally going to get chinned. There's no doubt about it. I was going to get bashed up by these QPR fans. So I decided the best idea was to jump over 5 seats. So literally, I flew through the air over 5 rows, and I actually landed in amongst 2 girls who were actually Newcastle fans as well, who I've since met. Her cup of soup went all over the place. It was just after half time, which I landed in. My head bashed off the plastic seat, and luckily, thank the Lord, those stewards appeared and they basically got, they said, "You're right," and they got a hold of us and got us out. Well, what was going on behind us, God only knows. But I got escorted out, and as I got escorted along, I said, "Well, I'm not going to get nicked for that. I was trying to get away. I wasn't causing trouble. You know what I mean?" And they went, "No. We'll just we'll put you out. We'll stick you in the away end. How did you get in there?" So, "Well, I got free tickets." I said, "But I don't really want to say like where I got the tickets from," kind of thing. Anyway, basically the frog marches out, and as I was getting frog marched out, some of my mates had seen us who had obviously gone down to the match with, and they started as you would. He's here, he's there, he flies through the air, Stevie Wraith. So, of course, by that time, there's about 100 people in the away end who've all cottoned on to what these are singing, basically saying the same song. So, yeah, that's it. That's probably my most embarrassing moment in football. I had a pretty cut on the back of my head. I've still got the scar. But, yeah, not my proudest moment. And I couldn't believe it when, as I say, I saw this photograph with Cliffy on. And just, from that particular game. So, there it is. The elephant in the room has disappeared. I can put that photograph back in my collection, and I know for a fact that you, Stu, and you, Mitch, had a bit of a laugh on the day at that.
Well, yeah, I had a similar story to that. I'll come to it in the same stand as well, but I'll come to it later on when it's my turn.
Yeah,
very similar.
We'd been down, and there was a load of work. I think you were actually there when we met up. We met up in the Wetherspoons at Shepherd's Bush.
That's right.
The one that's in the shopping centre. Is it called the Central Bar, something like that?
Yeah, where apparently I was given it large, because when you started reading some of the stuff on when you read some of the stuff on some of these fancy and bloody websites, Steve Wraith was given it large in Shepherd's Bush, and then went down and got his comeuppance. I mean, for God's sake, I was having a but this is like.
There was a ton of having a grand day out. Good God, we were going up as champions. It was just a really good weekend. I actually
spoil a good story with the truth, Mitch.
I know. Exactly. I mean, I'd flown down with Chris Betts and Jamie Fender, and we'd stayed out near the airport, and then got the tube in and met everybody at the Central, and it was just a really good atmosphere. And we must have been stood not far from where that picture was taken, because I just remember Jamie turning to me going, "Was that Wraithy?" And we're looking, we're like, "What?" Because he must have. We had one eye on the kerfuffle that was going on in the top corner, so obviously Jamie at the time must have seen you go flying. Well, like, what the hell's going on up there? We couldn't work it out. But it was a really, really good day out. Good game to sort of round off a championship season. That's all we promoted.
Stop laughing, Hasty. Stop laughing.
I thought Mitch was telling you that it was a good game because you missed it,
I missed most of it, but yeah, it was one of the most bizarre sort of moments, because let's be fair, you're reasonably recognisable, Steve, even from a few hundred yards away, And it's just like, what the hell's going on up there? We didn't have a clue, because all Jamie seen was you flying down about 5 rows of stairs. And we're thinking, has he been picked up and thrown? What the hell? But yeah, we couldn't work it out. But that was a really good day. Nobody was having it large in Shepherd's Bush other than every Newcastle fan, because that was a cracking day out. It was a cracking weekend to round off a hell of a season, really. But yeah, that's the elephant out of the room for you, mate.
Well, the moral of the story is, don't get tickets off Peter Ramage.
Well, that is that as well.
moving on, Steve.
Well, the game I was thinking of was back in 1995. We went down, February 95 it was. My brother-in-law ran a pub in London, and so he said, "Why don't you come out for some of the games?" So this was the next fixture, so we thought, "Oh, well, yeah, match would go down." So we went down left work early, went down on the Friday night, had a good evening in the pub, and then Saturday morning, breakfast up and a few more beers there, and then into town, and gets to the ground. There was the usual kerfuffle of getting in, and it's one of those grounds, isn't it? Trying to find your way around that particular area, and it was just bedlam. One of the underground stations was shut that you couldn't get into, and it was chaos. Anyway, gets into the ground, and we're 2-0 down, and we'd only got in 10 minutes late. and we're already 2-0 down, and then turning around and asking, and the kid next to us telling us we're 2-0 down. They scored a third. It was like within the first 15 minutes, it was 3-0, and that was it. The game was over. Les Ferdinand absolutely just tore apart. Scored 2 goals. I forget who it was. Scored the first goal, but Les scored the next 2. I missed them all, actually. I missed Les's third goal by talking to the kid, wanting to find out what had gone on before. And that was it. It was an absolute disaster. Then got back to the pub, got caught in an altercation while playing a game of pool, which resulted in a couple of lads being taken to hospital. Then it was the police came, they carted some of the other lads off. A couple of the locals got carted off. I'm surprised. I was playing pool at the time. I didn't get carted off, even though I was standing there with a pool cue, swinging it all over the place. So I was quite lucky. But the follow up to it was even worse, because obviously the police got involved. But then some dodgy lawyer from London must have passed on the personal details to some crazy mob in London, who started ringing up and threatening her, and they were going to come up and burn our houses out, and it just got absolutely crazy, to tell you the truth. And all of this was like just a weekend away in London, and it seemed to go on for about 4 or 5 months. You'd be getting woken up at like 2 o'clock in the morning by some cockney ringing you up, giving you grief, and it got to the point where you were going, but you won, you beat with 3-0, get lost. And this was cute. I could understand it if it had been some crazy West Ham mob, or the Chelsea headhunters or something like that. But this was like a bunch of blokes from QPR, So that was that game, that particular one, missing the goals, carting yourself all the way down there, missing all 3 goals, none of which your team scored, and you're taking absolute humping. But I suppose the one good thing that came out of it was, I think it was that game where he tore apart that convinced Keegan to sign Les Ferdinand. I think it was that particular game that he went, you know what, I'll have that bloke. And so if anything did come out of it, I suppose it was that, So.
Good stuff. Barry Hogan's asking you a question, George. There, whether you saw it, he's asking you about Stan Bowles. But we'll ask you about your first game anyway. What's your first memory of Newcastle QPR? Oh, you're muted, George. You're muted. Sorry, mate.
The one I want to talk about is a home game where we beat them 3-2 at St James's, 35,500 there. It was a strange game because my father and other members of the family always like to go and see QPR because they had a feeling that QPR always tried to play football. And this is one game where I've got to agree, and I was there, they did play tremendous football. And the only reason we beat them was they couldn't handle Wyn Davies. Wyn Davies just ran the legs off them and out-jumped them and out-fought them. Otherwise, we would have got beat. There's no doubt about that. That was Wyn Davies taking the match away himself. The other... Barry Hogan's talking about Stan Bowles. Well, if you look at the list of QPR players, the number of talented players they've had over the years, Bowles, Marsh, and lots of others who played for England and lots of other big clubs after they left QPR. But they produced some really, really talented players. Stan Bowles was a genius. He could thread the ball, put a pass through the eye of a needle, and could shoot from anywhere, do all sorts of incredible things with the ball. But like so many geniuses, he was flawed. He was a nasty little so-and-so who would have a sly kick off the ball, dive in the penalty area when there's nobody near him and shouting, ref, and all that sort of rubbish. And, it kind of knocked the shine off his genius. But he was a very, very clever player, very talented player indeed. The match I talked about was 3-2, and it was Burton, Dyson, and Gibb scored for us at the Wilkes, and Allen scored for them. And as I say, a good game, but a one that we won because of one man, Wyn Davis, who just ran the legs off them. Our side that day was McFall, Craig Clark, McNamee, Monka, Burton, Robson, Gibb, Davis, and Dyson and Foggin. And there was some. We had some good parts in the game, but the actual winner was Wyn Davis. Was outstanding. The other thing is that when you look at the list of former players and managers, there was two that my family loved, and I never really understood why. One was somebody called Alex Stock, and the other one was Bill Dodgen, who was the manager that day. Now, Alex Stock was the assistant manager at Arsenal for a while, and is credited with bringing some of the youngsters on who went on to make the double winning team the manager that the Scotsman whose name I can't remember. George Graham, sorry. And he also was a friend of Bill Nicholson. Now, Bill Nicholson was credited with running the what they call push and run football for Spurs when they won the double and were almost untouchable. But the man that helped to guide him was Alex Stock, and he was a through and through QPR man. And the other one I like was Bill Dodgen, who actually managed QPR for nearly 10 years on the trot. Now, I don't know how, apart from people like Ferguson and others, there aren't many people who manage one club for that sort of length of time. So there's lots of things about QPR which are likeable, and one of them is, as I say, my family always thought they played football, and that's what attracted us to it. And that match was good football, but Wyn Davis was just that bit better.
Good stuff. Excellent. Stu, last but not least, your first memory of Newcastle versus QPR.
Well, my first trip to Loftus Road was in the 93-94 season. We'd just been promoted, and it was in January. And I had friends from Liverpool. One of them was living in Kentish Town. He was doing some, I think he actually hadn't become the QC or something. So me and my pal went to stay with him and went down the Thursday night, Friday there. The game was on the Sunday. I think it might have been on Sky Sports, I'm not sure. But, you know, the ground's quite tight as well off this road. But what I remember is we got off some tube station or whatever, and you could see that it was next to BBC TV Centre. So the nearest bar next to the ground, if I remember right, was called the Springbok. So after 2 or 3 days of heavy drinking, like when we mate were a bit tender, and we were meant to meet the lads I was working with in the bakery at the time, and the ground we had tickets next to each other. So I said, we'll see if we can find them in the Springbok, but you know, we'll have to keep ourselves to ourselves in case it'll be full of home fans. Well, you went in and it was just shocker block of Newcastle, you know, and the tune black and white army chant just was going on and on and on. It was great. We managed to get into the ground just as they kicked off. And this is when Jigsaw, Lee Clark, scored from the edge of the box. It was like a bit of a scrappy bit beforehand, but the goal was at the other end. And I'm sure he hit it with his left foot, which I reckon he wouldn't have scored many with his left foot. And by the time we're all celebrating that, the Bakers lads come in and they said, who scored? I said, Lee Clark from 20 yards, and no one would believe us for about 20 minutes. You know, there was no like mobile phones where you could check and everything. They equalised, and then if the second half started, if you remember, I'm sure you all do remember, we used to greet the opposition goalkeeper when they come running towards the Gallagher's. Now you'd give them a round of applause, and then they'd like wave the gloves, and then there was like a barrage of fingers, and people were doing gold coffee and Nescafe adverts with their hands, you know, and it was like, Now, me and Mitch, we did that, didn't we? We're watching one of the games over Christmas.
What, a Liverpool game? Sat behind a bunch of Liverpool fans in tandem, just saying, It's fantastic.
So the keeper was Tony Roberts, and for the rest of he was just getting dodgy keeper constantly. And then at the end, the one of my favourite partnerships of all time was Colin Beardsley. And I'm not sure if Cole meant to set the ball up as he did, because I think he was trying to control it. And the ball just span up in the air. And somehow Beardsley, the size of him, managed to get his leg round this big strap and set off and hit this volley, sumptuous volley at the top corner. And it was just Q Bedlam. And we beat them 2-1, and the ground was, well, Newcastle, and anyway, it was just bouncing. So that was my first game down at Loftus Road. The next one was the following season, where I had an incident like yours, Steve. So I'll come round to that next time round.
Look forward to it. Take
Oh,
away
by the way,
my...
they played a full English team that day as well. Every player was English for Newcastle that day.
God, wow. That tells you how long ago it was. Makes you all feel old when you hear things like that. Okay,
Well,
Steve. No, Steve, back to you, mate. Steve Wilkinson.
Right. Well, I didn't think I would actually get to do this game, because I thought somebody else would have mentioned it. But I think it needs to be said. I'm sure we'll get lots of comments on those watching in. Is Keegan's debut in 82? Sorry. I was lucky enough to have a season ticket at the time, so I didn't have to queue for however long everybody did to get in. Because if you remember, everybody was just up for this game, and there was thousands outside, and probably loads got knocked out. I think the crowd limit at that time on the ground, because I probably had the Leazer's roof off at that time. I can't remember when that came off, but and the Milburn stand was limited as well. On well, it wasn't even called the Milburn in those days. It was whatever it was, just the stand. So I think the crowd was only 36,000, and there must have been loads locked out. And it was the atmosphere was just unbelievable. First game of the season, and it was just made. The script was written. It just had to be Keegan to score, and I think there was always sort of when he burst through. It was a bit like the goal that Joe Linton and Wilson put on the other week against Crystal Palace. If you remember, it sort of moved from that side, and he went towards the Gallagher end, and he just placed it inside the post without needing the deflection that Joe Linton got, and the place just went mental. And it was just a fitting start to what was the time he had there. Arthur Cox at the manager at the time, and we're starting to get some decent players in. That day, obviously Waddle was playing, and we went on and did pretty well that season. So that was a memory, and I'm sure there's lots of people who can put their own personal memories of that game on. Yeah,
the crowd sucked it in, is what Busker used in one of his infamous lyrics.
And wasn't Shearer ball boy that day? I think Alan Shearer's often said he was ball boy in behind the Gallagher end that day.
Yeah, I think he was involved as a ball boy. Certainly there when Keegan flew off in the helicopter in '84, but I don't think that was his first game. I think he'd done one or two before when the Co-op used to provide the ball boys at St James's Park back in the good old days. Mitch, then on to your next game.
But this one ties in pretty much with similar thing to what my dad said before about the whole family. We were ingrained in enjoying good football and enjoying good footballers. And I'm going to talk about a loss, actually. It was our first time we played them back in the Premier League, October 93. We lost 2-1. Now, the player everybody talks about that day, and I've got to say quite rightly in many ways, is Les Ferdinand. That was the first time I'd seen Les Ferdinand in the flesh. And he was unplayable, absolutely unplayable that day. Was magnificent, and little did I know, a few years later he'd be scoring goals forward at St James's Park, and he turned into this player I always admired, because on that day he was just a man mountain. He was totally unplayable. But the player I wanted to see that day was Ray Wilkins, coming at the end of his career, and I think he doesn't get the plaudits for on that day. He ran that midfield. Everything went through Ray Wilkins. And yeah, he was, not quite the same player he was. He certainly wouldn't have had the pace that he'd had previously. But by God, he had the football. And he just acted like a conductor in the centre of the park. Up against seasoned campaigners like Paul Bracewell, But he just looked like he was at half a yard ahead all the time. And I was as enamored watching him as I was watching the game itself and enjoying the goal we scored to bring it level. Not that lasted long, and it only lasted 3 minutes before Ferdinand had set up the what turned out to be the winner. But But it sort of epitomises the QPR team. At that time, they were still trying to play good football. They had players in that team who were either sort of ending their career and still trying to play at the very highest level, or they had young players coming through with huge potential, like Ferdinand, and I think Darren Peacock was in that team the same day as well. And their players we went on and spent millions of pounds on to bring to St James's Park. That was huge money at the time, what we paid for Peacock in particular. So that was why that game sticks in my head for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, it was back in the Premiership, and back in the top flight under Keegan, and wanting to fly high. And QPR very quickly reminded me that we were playing against some very good teams and some very good players. And Ray Wilkins was the one that stood out for me.
Yeah, legend of the game, Butch, as he was called. Good player for England as well. Steve, your next memory, please. Steve Hasty.
Yeah, my memory was also, believe it or not, Ray Wilkins, that particular game, believe it or not. But the other memory, obviously, is the one that Steve's just mentioned, the Keegan game. I remember I was in the old West Paddock there when you used to go up the stairs at the side of the ground near the Gallagher end. And sort of come in, there was like a couple of turnstiles in the open part. And I remember getting in there. I couldn't get a ticket for the Gallagher because the Gallagher had completely sold. In fact, I can't even remember whether you needed a ticket at the time. I remember getting in and just being absolutely squashed, jam-packed. And the movement, again, I'd never experienced it in the paddock before. Normally, the paddock was a really quiet place to stand. You had plenty of elbow room and everything, and that's why sort of people in my age group used to avoid it. But on that particular weekend, you just wanted for that Saturday, you just wanted a ticket. You would have gone anywhere. If they'd said to you, "We've got a spare seat, but it's up in the floodlight," you would have taken it because you were just desperate for to get in, and. Just the movement, the whole movement, everything about it. And then, of course, because you're in the paddock, you're in the perfect position when you saw the ball come in and you see the lovely little flick by Verratti, and then you just see Keegan moving. And even today, it's like slow motion. I can still see him moving across with the ball in front of you. And you're thinking, go on. And you just go and go because it was like slow motion. And then when you put the ball in the back of net and you just see this cascade of people coming down the Gallagher end. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'd have been squashed against the wall at the front, even though I normally stood halfway up. If I'd been there, that was like, and just a sheer ecstasy that it was just buzzing through you in that particular one. Because the whole build-up of Keegan coming, especially after the injury in the 82 World Cup and that type of thing, and people were saying he's finished, and it was quite a gamble. But from that day onward, like an idol was created. You just saw it being moulded that particular day, the perfect start, and even better. And I think this probably rings true today. The words that Keegan used in his interview afterwards, and I think some people at St James's Park today could probably learn from it, where he praised the fans. He didn't take the praise for himself. He praised the fans. And he said what it meant to him and what it meant to the fans, and how he it was all about, from that point onwards, everything about Keegan was about the fans. It was about him playing for Newcastle for the fans. And, that's why he's up there on the very, very top for me in the history of Newcastle United. But to be there, it was an honour and a privilege to be there that particular game, and yes, QPR were always played decent football, and as George is talking about Stan Bowles, I think the best story ever of Stan Bowles is that he didn't used to turn up in the changing rooms until 10 minutes before kickoff because there was a bookmakers next door, and he was in the bookies, and he would come in, and sometimes he was in the bookies dressed in his kit, and then would just come in, and especially at the time when they had people like Terry Venables managing them, and it was like, I'll be there, and he would be nipping out and putting his bets on where he's still got his kit on, and then coming in, taking the coat off, hanging it up, and then walking out on the pitch. That's the sort of, you don't get players like that anymore.
No, definitely not. George, your next memory, please.
Well, I thought, like everybody else, I fall between two stools. Knowing I'd have a second one, I picked two in case they got picked. Well, they both got picked, didn't they? Steve did the first one, and then Neil did the second one. But for the same football reasons, I mean, you know, you just had a feeling that Keegan was the start of something big, and you wanted to be there. And that's the emotion that I remember, is that you just felt it was the start of something big. And the other thing is that Neil and Steve, who sit beside me at matches, will know that when a new player turns up at Newcastle United, I sit analysing is he a player, what's he got, what he hasn't got, and all the rest of it. And I'm a bit of a pain, actually. But there was nothing about Keegan. Nothing at all. He looked like a footballer. He was nearly untouchable when he was on the ball. And as soon as he got an eye for goal, you knew where it was going to go. So I make no apologies for choosing that one again. It was great. Tony, he's right. Tony Seeley was a Walden lad because he went to Burnside. But never mind. And the other one was Neil's, Ray Wilkins. Ray Wilkins didn't get the credit at league level or at international level for the sort of football he played. He was a tremendous player. And Neil's right, he'd lost a yard or so. But good players, they can usually overcome that by skill, and Ray Wilkins could do that. So again, joining in with what Neil said, he would take some beating in football skills and the range of passing, the short pass, the long pass. He could do it all and cause mayhem with just a couple of passes, but direct it from the centre circle. Absolutely right what Neil said. He could direct it from the middle of the pitch and nobody could get near. But they were the other two I picked, and I'm not surprised others picked them because, as I say, Keegan was the start of something big, and Wilkins was a chance to see a great player at nearly the end of his career.
Okay, good stuff. Stu, your final story on Newcastle versus Queen's Park Rangers.
No problem. I'm still in shock that Steve Wilkinson managed to talk about Keegan and Joe Linton in the same sentence. It's really stunned us. And I didn't mention the 5-5 because I said something on Twitter earlier, and loads of people commented it. So I thought one of the, shall we say, more mature members of the panel might have discussed it. Because I just remember sitting at home and watching it on Grandstand or something. Well, not watching the game, just as the scores were coming through. And the final score, whatever, it just kept coming up, goal. And for those who lived in the West End of Newcastle, primary school, there's a school, I think it's still there now, called Cannon Street in Benwell. And they had a pitch that had a huge slope. So when Newcastle 4-0 up at half-time and drawn 5-5 each, I was convinced that they were playing on Cannon Street's pitch. Because when we played there, we were getting beat 1-0 at half-time for no forward, and we won 9-1. That's how bad the steep was. But the game I want to talk about is the season, the 95-96 season, when this time we had signed Ferdinand. I think he'd done enough damage and impressed enough in the 3 or 4 previous games against us. And it was his first return back. And it was one of the games I used to go to London, every London game with a couple of lads. And sometimes we had tickets, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes one of us did or two of us did, but very rarely did all 3 of us have tickets. So this was the incident where, the time where it was my turn to get in the home end. We managed to get 2 tickets for the way, and it was me saying, we'll get one outside. So we met in the Springbok game. The Tune Black and White Army was still going on from 18 months previously, so I don't know if the same people were still there that just kept singing it constantly or not. So I was sitting at the stand where you were removed from, Steve. I didn't get removed.
The Steve Wraith stand, we'll call it.
Yeah, the Steve Wraith stand. So I was sitting there, and it was in October, but it was a really warm day. And I think every time we went to London, we always thought it was like the Sydney sexist thing, like London. But we always thought it was warmer, but it was a hot day for October. So I'm sitting in the stand, and I didn't have the colours on, but I had a pin badge in me, like in the collar bit there. And I was this young lad, who must have been about 6, and his father. along from him was this like older guy, and just normal QPR fans. And I'm thinking, right, I'm quite happy it's my turn. It's QPR, as someone mentioned before. It's not West Ham or Chelsea or something. I've got no qualms sitting the QPR in. And the Newcastle fans were in great voice that day. They were just to the right of where we were sitting. And the young lad who got brought to the game by his father, he was clapping with the Newcastle fans, even though they were QPR fans, and he was joining in. And so I took my pin badge off and I gave it to him. And his father, "Oh, thank you so much, that's very kind." You went, "No problem." So Newcastle won the game 3-2, but each time we scored, and Ferdinand scored one. He had I think the centre half was Maddox. It was a foot race from about the halfway line. Gillespie scored 2, and one was a header, which was a rarity in itself. But Ferdinand's foot race, there was only one winner. He out-muscled him, out-powered him, and then just drove the ball into the net. And even then, I didn't jump up, I just clenched my fist and get in. And it wasn't until the third goal went in, this guy, Chualong, he stood up and it was, "Oh, you Northern beeps," and everything, every bad bit of language you could think of. And I sat there and I went, "I've never said a word," and I was really trying to invest in him. And he was like, "Come on, the Queensbury rules. I used to be a boxer in my day." And the young kid said to him, like, Dad, this man's been horrible. And the father says, "Listen, this guy's been all right with us. He's looked after the child and everything else." And then as soon as I knew it, the lads, this old guys took a swing at us, like the ex-boxer. So within the split second, he left fist had landed in his solar plexus and he fell over 2 rows of seats. And he's got back up and his daughter was there screaming, and 2 of his friends come running over. And this woman behind us is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a football match. For a glorious summer's day, she had an umbrella and she started hitting the guy with it, not me. "You're like this every game. You're always causing trouble. This lad's been really kind. He's looked after that boy." And the stewards come storming around, and the lad, I called him the lad, he was, he must have been in his 50s or something. He was taken out. He was still remonstrating. "I'm a champion boxer. I have this." And I said, "And I'm watching the game. You're not, pal." It was so funny how this old woman attacked him with an umbrella. I don't know why she had it seriously, there was not a cloud in the sky. But at the end of the day, the old man gave us his phone number, but I wasn't posh enough or rich enough to have a mobile phone at the time. I thought, well, the chances of sitting in the stand next to him again are null and void. So I was half expecting this fella to be outside with half of the West End Boxing Club or something to be waiting for us, but the crowd dispersed quick enough anyway. But it was such a funny experience watching this woman hit him. So that was the one I wanted to mention earlier. I would have seen I knew about yours and getting ejected, but I didn't. The steward said to me, "As everyone defend us, it's okay, you can stay. He's the troublemaker, and season ticket or not, he's out." Shocking. So I'm glad that we mentioned Keegan's debut as well, the 5-5 for a show. So that's it.
I'll tell you what, mate. The 5-5, I'm surprised none of we're really expanded on, because that's probably the most Newcastle game ever.
Definitely.
Listen,
I watched on grandstand or listen to it.
Well, I was with my granda, and the apocryphal tale is I learned to write with a bookie's pen, and I was sat on the bench, which was between the Mauritania and the Ladbrokes in Howden. when my granda used to go in for a pint, and I'd be writing his bets outside when he went into Laddies and put the bets on. And every time you come out with the bookies, we were another goal up, and I couldn't believe it. And then we got to 5-3, and you're thinking, well, it's not long now. We must have creamed this. And when he come out the bookies and told us it was 5-5, I couldn't believe it. It was like, what the? and looking back on it, it's probably the most Newcastle United game ever.
Definitely. Was that on the plastic pitch as well at that time?
It was,
yeah. Because we did the first time we played there, we were all over the place. I remember seeing it in Match of the Day, and we just didn't know what to do. The ball was bouncing, it bounced over the crossbar from a gentle distance. They had got it with because they were used to it, but nobody else could play on it.
No, definitely not. 15 minutes to go. Big shout out to Old Coach House Distillery. They've been our sponsors throughout January. We're coming to the end of their sponsorship today. The world's first alcohol-free distillery, and Genesque is the one which Steve Hasty and Samantha from our panels have tried, and they both recommended. So big thank you to them. Big shout out to Q-Tech Shop, The makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, and they do a lot of our GIFs and graphics and stuff these days as well. They also make our t-shirts and our cups, which you can get at newcastlelegends.com. Some Supermac t-shirts and cups available too, so if there's any birthdays or the like coming up, well worth popping on there just to see what we've got. If you're a new time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. Just click the little emblem down in the bottom right hand corner, give this video a like, and if you share it, it'll share to your social media. Just helps us build the community. Also, a big shout out to John from Jab Signature, who designs our posters. And as always, we like to try and debut the Three Amigos poster for Friday night. It's quite a good one, this, lads. I mean, he's obviously following a theme here, because he went for Peaky Blinders, if you remember, last week, and this week he's gone for The Godfather. So there we go. There we are, Mitch, Steve, myself and Marlon Brando, and you will see the new sponsor is unveiled at the bottom. Spider VPN are sponsoring us for February until the 4th of March. They're paying for the StreamYard application, which we do the shows on, so big welcome to Spider VPN, who are going to be our new sponsor, so thanks very much to them. Right, what we always do is we always find celebrity fans, first and foremost, who support Queen's Park Rangers. So let's go with the first one. Here we go.
Ashley Giles.
Yeah.
Cricketer.
Ashley Giles, the cricketer, correct.
Bill Bailey.
Bill Bailey.
Really?
Bill Bailey, recent winner of Strictly, I believe.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I
my
know.
God.
That is.
Pete Doherty.
Doherty.
Yes.
Pete Doherty, yeah.
Pete Doherty.
Not that one.
Oh, Jesus.
Go.
Go.
Let's go.
Yep, Michael Gove is apparently a Queen's Park Rangers fan.
He's a Queen's Park Ranger, I know that.
He's a Queen's Park Ranger. And last but not least, this is a well-known face.
Oh, Martin Cludes.
Oh, well done, George. Martin Clunes, the actor. That was the I did try to throw you, lads, and George just pulled a blinder there. Did you christen him or something, George?
No, the top lip gives him away. That top lip, you can't. It's like a bloody dragon nose, man. You can't get away with it.
I've got to be honest. I think you've been plotting against me, lads. I think you've got a secret WhatsApp group or something going on, yeah, where you've gone. Canada have Wraith beaten with. Canada have Wraith beaten with.
I was going to say, I mentioned Tony Seeley from Wallsend. He was in the year above me at school. He went to Borough as juniors, and we were at St Columbus. And I remember at the time, everybody in Wallsend was saying that he was going to be an absolute superstar footballer. And he was a fantastic player. But even an 11-year-old, 10, 11-year-old, and we were like the year below at school, you just knew from the performances he put in for the Borough, I'm sure it was the Borough he played for, that he was going to be a great footballer. He went to Wallsend Boys Club after that. That once he got to like sort of 11, 12. But he was a smashing footballer, and I think he's a coach now. I'm not sure. I know he did a lot of coaching at times. But he was a year above me in Wallsend at that particular time. So remember him well. Remember as a really good footballer. And you do tend to do that, don't you? You tend to sort of find players around about your same age group. And obviously the one below me at school, managing Newcastle now. So what can I say?
Good stuff. Okay, right, we're going to go through the players who played for Queen's Park Rangers and for Newcastle, and we're going to get your teams, lads. So first up,
Loic Remy.
Remy,
yeah.
Loic Remy, yes, came and made a big impression whilst he was on loan at Newcastle from QPR. This one, we've mentioned this lad tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Darren
Peacock.
Very young looking Darren Peacock there.
Extremely.
Les.
So Les, of course, who is currently at Queen's Park Rangers.
James Perch.
Yeah.
James Perch trying to find this most awkward photograph possible of him, but found it.
Was it good?
Oh,
That's a good one.
Going back a bit.
I think it's thrown you, lads, because he's got a cup.
It's one of those trophies.
Not used to seeing Newcastle players with a cup. Have I got yours?
Get a date on it. I'm looking for something. I'll clue in the back to get a date.
I think you have.
Yep.
Come on then.
It's got
Wayne Faraday.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't think you looked like that.
Wayne Faraday. I have spoken to Wayne. He's going to come on the show at some point. So we're going to get Wayne on one of the shows in the future. Just to let everybody know as well, Gavin Peacock's book is out. You'll have seen that on Twitter. And Gavin Peacock's going to be on the show on Sunday afternoon talking about his book and his time at Newcastle. And there we go. Gavin Peacock.
Yeah.
Peacock. Townsend.
Fits all.
Andros Townsend.
Andros Townsend, of course. Now, I have picked a couple of because sometimes we struggle with managers and people who've coached, but there is loads. Yeah, you're quite right.
Yeah.
Ian Dowie.
Of course,
Shearer's right hand man. There he is, McLaren.
Steve.
Jim Smith.
The bald eagle.
Stan
Anderson. Yeah. Got a couple more players. We're rolling over with players here.
Glenn
Roder.
Glenn Roder. Yeah.
John Burridge.
John Burridge.
Is that Fitzhall?
That's Fitzhall. That's Fitzhall.
Fitzhall.
Kevin Brook.
Yeah.
Leon Best.
Leon Best, yeah. I did have one more celebrity as well. It's at the bottom of my pictures. There we go.
Is it Dudley Moore?
No.
Oh, it's
that's Shane Ritchie, isn't it?
yeah.
Is it Shane Ritchie?
It is I.
Yeah.
Shane Ritchie and Benidorm with a wig on. God. I'm glad. I keep on my record, lads. I got you a Wayne Faraday. I can't believe it. Fantastic. Okay. At the end of the show, we always get you to do an all-time 11 between the two teams, players that have played by both teams. So, George, we'll let you go first this week.
Right. It's 4-4-2, and it's a mixture of great players and some that are in just for sympathy or people I like. Burridge in goal. Barton, Hughes, Peacock, Ramage, Dyer, Jennis, McCreary and Townsend, and up front Peacock and Ferdinand. And on the bench where you can take your pick, Roder, Perch, Simpson, Best, Coppinger, and that's just about the lot, I think. And to manage it, again for old time's sake, Jim Smith.
Okay. Mitch.
Okay, I've gone with Budgie because I can't not, because everybody knows how much I love Budgie. And then my back four, Danny Simpson, who I still believe is one of the most underrated right full backs we've ever had. Centre back pairing of Glenn Roder and Darren Peacock, and I put Rami at left back. As Steve would probably remember, we used to get Rami on some of the radio shows that we've done, and he's always box office when he comes on. He's a really good guest and he's a good lad, even though he give you dodgy tickets.
Yeah.
And then midfield for I've got to put Wayne Faraday in because I was really excited for Wayne Faraday coming to our club when he came, and then it turned out he had all the sprinting speed of Olympic gold medal winner Alan Wells and all the ball control of Olympic gold medal winner Alan Wells, and that was the problem. He's so exciting to watch going down the wing, and he had absolutely zero final ball. And then in the centre midfield, I've gone for James Perch anchoring it and Gavin Peacock in a more advanced role. And I put Wayne Routledge on the left wing because I think he's another very underrated player who just seems to move around from club to club, and he finally seems to have settled, seen his career off in Swansea, and good luck to the lad because he contributed quite a lot to us getting back up that first time. And then up front, Les Ferdinand and Loic Remy. And because he was my manager, as a teenager, when you start going to the games regular, you start going to games, your first away games, Jim Smith, the Bald Eagle. And I'll always have a big soft spot for him. And I think if a couple of things had gone differently for him, I think he would have done much better for us than he actually did in the end. So that's my 11 and me manager.
Okay, Steve Wilkinson.
Yeah, similar in some ways. I've got a 4-3-3 on mine. John Burridge in goal. I struggled to find a goalie. I hadn't realised he'd played, and then if you go through him and you find there was not many teams he hadn't played for, isn't it? Danny Simpson. I agree with what Mitch says. I think he was a good servant all the way through. Darren Peacock and Warren Barton left back. Midfield Joey Barton, Jermaine Genius, and David McCreary, and forward Gavin Peacock, Soles and Paul Goddard. When we first signed Paul Goddard, I thought it was the first time we signed a proper first division player. It really had quality at that time, so I had to find a way of getting him in the team. And again, Jim Smith as manager. I was thinking I can't pick McLaren, so then I remembered Jim Smith was manager, so he's the man for me.
Great stuff, Steve Hasty.
I went for Budgie in goal as well. I went for Warren Barton and Kenny Sansom as the two fullbacks. I went for Glenn Broder and Darren Peacock as the two centres. Midfield, I went for Dyer and Jennings, just because Dyer and Jennings at that particular time for Newcastle, when they started running, they could run forever. I put Joey Barton in there to hold the midfield. And playing as the top of the diamond, I put Gavin Peacock with Ferdinand and Remy up front. And I went for Jim Smith as well. I went for Jim Smith purely for the entertainment value, because he was the sort of manager who could start an argument in an empty room. And I remember the great story about when he tried to get rid of John Anderson, and anyone who meets Ando, just ask him the story and he'll tell you. So that's why I went for Jim.
Great stuff, Stu. Leave the final 11 to you.
It was difficult this week. There's so many players like Goddard that didn't even get in the team, Kieran Dyer, etc. But I went for Budgie in goal, and I was torn between Danny Simpson and Perch at right back. I've done a 4-4-2 with a diamond, which is now back in fashion at St James's, and I picked Perch because I just looked at how more committed he was to the Newcastle cause over the period. He wasn't. I think Simpson was more talented, but Perch was far more committed. I had Rhoda and Darren Peacock centre halves, and I had Kenny Sansom at left back, who got brought to the club a while back. The base of the diamond was Barton with Andros Townsend on one and Kevin Brock on the other wing, who I thought had a lovely, lovely left foot. Gavin Peacock at the tip of the diamond, and then Remy and Ferdinand up front. So I decided to then put Ramage as player coach underneath Jim Smith, who honestly, when we signed Jim Smith as a manager, it was massive news and it was like a marquee signing. Yeah. And it made us feel like we were a big club signing, like a trophy winner in Jim Smith. I've even got a chairman in Jamie Rubin and a legal advisor in Nick DeMarco. We've got the full stay set up there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Great stuff. Extra point for effort, Stu, tonight, mate. You've done well. Great stuff. Just something great about getting the Retro Show back, up and running. We will be back next Wednesday again, same time, 6 till 7. Tom Dixon has put a request in, lads. Everybody all right with Norwich next week?
Yeah.
Aye, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. There you go, Tom. Don't say we don't listen to the viewers. Norwich City next Wednesday. The Retro Show 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you then, lads. Have a good week. And Steve and Neil, I will see you both 5:30 on Friday. Take care, lads.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Right.
Okay.
Head back with the critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.